911 proxy service has been permanently shut down as of July 28th. Now, let me explain what this service was, because it's a little bit different than your typical VPN or proxy service that influencers might shill to you. So 911 provided you with residential IP addresses. If you were to look up, if you were to do a whois on one of their IPs, you'd probably see that they belong to Comcast or Verizon, like one of those residential providers, and it would be in a residential IP address block. Now, why would anybody care about that? Isn't the point of using a proxy or a VPN to just change your IP so that people can't track you? Well, yeah, for the vast majority of people, that's all they need, and it doesn't really matter what IP they get as long as it's not their own. But if you were to sign up to, say, ExpressVPN, for example, the IP addresses of all their servers that you're going to have access to are well known because that's a well-known VPN provider. And people that are running websites and services on the internet, they can very easily just get a list of all of Express's or whoever's IP addresses and then filter them as they wish or limit the functionality of what traffic from those IPs is able to do. Because of course, if you run a website, you're going to see the IP address of everybody who connects to you, and there's no way that they can prevent you from seeing that, or at least there's no way that they can prevent you from seeing the proxy's IP or whatever you're connecting to before connecting to the website. And IP filtering is pretty commonly done by social media sites, for example. They might not let you log in from certain IPs, or they might just let you view posts and not make new ones or not upvote those. And the reason is to try to cut down on spam bots and people using sock accounts to like upvote their own posts. Clearly, there's a huge incentive to do those kinds of things, right? To spam social media with different ideas for the purposes of marketing a product or for political purposes. Very often, bots are used to amplify certain political ideas on social media. And there's also bots that purchase things that are in limited quantities like PS5 or sneakers. They'll buy all of those for resellers in bulk because usually you're only allowed to make one purchase from one IP address. And then of course they'll block VPNs because anyone's going to try to do that as the first thing to change their IP. So bots that use things like NordVPN or ExpressVPN to switch their IPs for their accounts, they're going to get caught and banned very quickly. And it's pretty easy to just ban the whole botnet by doing IP range bans. But social media sites are much less likely to range ban residential IPs. And same thing goes for online stores, because then that would likely end up banning a lot of legitimate users, because just like how NordVPN has a block of IP addresses that they give to people, so does Comcast, so does Time Warner. So if you ban a large range, you end up banning a lot of real people. So having a botnet use a residential proxy service like this is much better. And there's all kinds of other shady things that people use these residential IP addresses for. Now, I'm sure some people out there actually do use these proxies for legitimate things. In fact, this could have actually been a cheap alternative to a VPN service because it's only $28 for access to 150 proxies, and supposedly that access never expires. Well, now it did, of course, but if you had this, like let's say that you purchased this 2 or 3 years ago, you would have presumably had access to 150 proxies for $28. And that's something that for most people would probably be fine. Kind of depends on what you're doing. Like I wouldn't want to do any banking with this kind of a proxy connection. But if it's something like, I don't know, you just want to browse social media, but you don't want Facebook or Google to know your IP address, then yeah, I mean, this would probably be a much cheaper solution than using a VPN. But even then, I don't know how reliable it would be, since it's going to be using residential connections instead of more reliable data center connections. And overall, this just seems like the kind of thing, specifically having those residential IPs, the kind of thing that would be more attractive to cyber criminals than online shoppers or people wanting, like legitimate online shoppers, or people wanting to legitimately use social media, not just have a bunch of sock accounts upvote a post. So it kind of makes you think, if most people that are using this service are doing so for black hat SEO and illegal hacking activity, then who the hell are the people volunteering their computers to route this traffic? Because there were tens of thousands of nodes in this residential proxy service, 10 times as many as Tor. And the reason I bring up Tor is because it's a little bit similar in the sense that it's kind of a proxy service, or rather a proxy chain service that is run by volunteers, where sometimes the service is used for illegal activity. But in Tor, illegal activity will only be associated with your IP if you set it up as an exit node and someone is doing illegal stuff that goes into the clear web. If it's on an onion, then it can't be seen anyway. But this 911 proxy, it's set up just to be a single hop. Someone connects to you and then you go out to the internet on their behalf. So illegal stuff would be associated to you. Everybody is an exit node in this kind of setup, which clearly is not something that most people are going to sign up for. I mean, you could just look at the stats on Tor. There's lots of people who volunteer for nodes. My nodes function as basically every single one of these flags except for an exit node. And so it turns out that when you start looking into how this actually gets installed on people's machines, that a lot of the proxy servers in this client proxy service are not exactly willing participants. 911 Proxy actually paid several other software vendors to bundle their proxy software with the installation wizard. So it was one of those programs that whenever you go to install some random shit off the internet, you got to make sure that a box isn't checked, or you got to make sure you hit disagree, because otherwise this is going to get thrown in. I think everyone's probably been there on especially a Windows machine in the past, where you're installing something like just some random crap, and then you open your browser and all of a sudden you've got a new toolbar, or there's like 3 extra icons on your desktop, and it's like, oh, where did all of this crap come from? 911 Proxy would be one of those applications. There were even fake VPN apps like Mask VPN and Do VPN floating around that in reality they just added you to this botnet, and they would let you connect to other bots to make it appear like you have a free VPN service. I mean, I guess technically you do, but in reality, the only reason it's free is because you are also a VPN server for somebody else, and in the background, you're going to be routing traffic for who knows, and there's a good chance that some of it's going to be illegal traffic. So what ultimately led to 911's demise? Well, the official story is that they got hacked. Their website is completely down now, but I was able to bring up a cached page of it from Google. And they start off by saying that for the past 2 years, someone has been impersonating their service by cloning the website and then paying to advertise it, making it so that when you search for 911 proxy, the fake one shows up before the legitimate one. And they were also doing phishing attacks on people and then reselling those stolen phished accounts. And they don't come right out and say this, but they're kind of implying that the illegal activity that was going on within their network was coming from these stolen accounts, as if it's something that they just had no idea about. And then they say on July 28th, just a few days ago, that their recharge system was hacked. So it went beyond just phishing and impersonation to a full-blown compromise of their systems. And so then they said, well, we're just going to shut down because, we're totally hacked. Everything's compromised and we're going to pull the plug. But this seems like a pretty big coincidence, considering that Brian Krebs wrote an article about them just 2 weeks ago, talking about 911's shady business practices and how they get their proxy clients by tricking people through shady software, and the fact that most of the talk about people using this service and most of the people promoting it was being done on hacking forums. So it pretty much confirms my suspicion about the service that it wasn't very legitimate from the get-go, or at least it wasn't something, it might have worked. I'm sure it worked actually, that, hackers were able to get a residential IP, but Not legitimate in the sense that it's not really meant to be used by people that just want to shop online or browse social media. You know, it's more meant for people that are up to no good. And the final nail in the coffin for them is that 911.re appears to have exit scammed a lot of their customers because now they're shut down. There's no way to get in contact with them. It wasn't a really transparent company from the beginning. Like they're, you know, it's kind of anonymous as far as who was running it. And a lot of people are claiming that they have paid a lot of money to rent IPs as recently as 2 weeks ago. Probably some people read Brian's article and decided to go sign up for it on 911. But yeah, nobody has gotten their money back, which further leads me to believe that this was a pretty shady business. So yeah, F's in the chat for people who paid money to these guys but didn't get their money's worth. I'm sure that there's plenty of other residential proxy services that you could use, and it's probably going to be worth doing more research into them to make sure you don't end up with another one that's going to exit scam. Like and comment to hack the algorithm. Follow me on Odyssey, and have a great day.